All right, we're going to go ahead and get started here now. So today we're going to, well, first let me introduce myself. My name is Matt Sherrod. I'm a data privacy and security analyst here at CyberData Pros. And today we're going to talk about an ISMS, or an information security management system, and why it's important and what parts of it, what it should contain, and why each part exists. Um, so to get started, an information security management system. Okay. And the information security management system is one of the foundational pieces of documentation for your information security program. And while there's nothing that explicitly states it needs to be aligned with ISO 27001, if you're not seeking an ISO 27001 audit, we here at CyberData Pros always make sure to align ourselves to that. If you are building an information security management system without any direct goal for certification or going before an assessor and auditor, you're welcome to stray from this. But we always recommend that when you're building your information security management system and when you're building out your information security management program, that you have some kind of standard in mind and you align yourself with it. So you'll see that ours closely aligns to ISO itself, and we make sure to reference ISO clauses at each part of our information security management system as well. So that way, it's very clear to each individual who is building the information security management system, any assessor that might see our ISMS, and to any members of the organization, why each piece is there and what is there to do. So to start out with, it's a good idea to just write a brief introduction where you might list any of the supporting documents or policies that will support this ISMS or be referenced in this ISMS. And then once you've listed that out, you can go ahead and get to the next part, which is the organizational context. With this being a broad foundational document that ties the rest of the information security program together, it's very important to lay out the organizational context of your business. What are the internal drivers and external drivers that can affect your information security program? These things could be such as loss or gain of revenue. These, of course, will determine how much money you have available for your information security program. And external drivers such as if you enter create a new service that creates potential for significant brand damage that didn't exist previously, such as you start offering a service that that holds a lot of personal identifiable information. You may go from a point where you didn't need to care about your brand image all that much to a potential data breach being something that could significantly harm your brand reputation, and so you may need to put more investment into your security program. Additionally, you need to outline the stakeholders' needs and expectations. This can be external stakeholders and this can be internal stakeholders and external stakeholders. This, of course, the primary internal stakeholders is going to be your executive team, your board of directors, whoever's at the top level making these decisions about the security program, its funding, and what it needs to accomplish. Externally can, of course, be your clients, your partners, and then, of course, there are the legal and regulatory requirements. You can have legal bodies that are overseeing your business, depending on what field you're in, what industry you're in. You may have particular requirements such as like a PCI requirement if you're processing card data. You may have HIPAA requirements. Depending on what region you're in, you may have data privacy requirements under GDPR, CIPRA, any of those things. So those need to be stated. You need to make sure that not only is it stated there, but that it can be easily digestible to anyone who's reading your ISMS what the company is expected to adhere to. You also want to lay out any contractual obligations. If you have a lot of very complex contractual obligations, you may want to reference a document that you have that specifically tracks those. And if you do have a lot of contractual obligations, you definitely do want to be tracking those in a separate doc, so that way you can make sure that your information security program is meeting those specific contractual requirements. And as you can see, this organizational context section aligns with clause 4 of ISO 27001. So as long as you're providing these key details, you should be able to check off that you are aligned with clause 4 of ISO 27001. The next section is going to talk about, oh, actually, I forgot there's another one that fell off here. Clause 4 that's important. So this one still falls under clause 4, but it could honestly have its own entire slide to itself, and that is scope. When you are scoping, it may not necessarily be as important if you are not intending to go before an auditor or an assessor. But if you intend to ever go before an auditor or an assessor, the absolute most important first step is correctly scoping. And this is going to be outlining precisely who, what systems, what departments, what regions are affected by this ISMS. Ideally, in every circumstance, it would be your entire organization. There's plenty of situations where we've seen organizational contexts where maybe it's just a small enclave, just a small region that's affected by this information system, and maybe there's entirely different information security system that is for other parts of the company. It may just be certain departments, it may just be certain teams, and teams that are being supported. It may be the entire company minus one particular region who has very different needs and requirements. But whatever you outline here is what you're going to be held to if you ever go before an auditor or an assessor. So make sure that you are very, very specific and very, very precise with who is and is not in scope of this particular ISMS. Okay, and the next part that we always include and is incredibly important is leadership. And that is going to be identifying and defining the leadership roles and responsibilities, the IRC, which members of the organization will need to be on the IRC, not specific people necessarily, but the roles and the departments that need to contribute or should be expected to contribute members and contribute their insight for the IRC itself, as well as outlining the leadership structure. So outlining what the leadership structure of the organization looks like and what roles those members of the leadership will have in the ISMS and in the Information Risk Council itself. And this will align you with clause 5 as well. This one is one that may need to be, this is a section that may be updated frequency if you have a lot of leadership turnover, because you will need to continuously update that leadership structure. And then step 6 is, well, clause 6 is planning of ISO, and this is another hefty section that we find very, very important. One for ISO, but just in general for making sure that your ISMS is bulletproof. And this section goes over planning. A large portion of that is going to be risk management, planning out your IRC and making sure the IRC is scheduled to meet regularly and to look over the ISMS regularly, defining your risk management policy, and making sure to have an ongoing risk register. In this section, you also want to list out your business objectives. So these will be likely a little bit different from your security objectives, but you should both list out your business objectives here and your security objectives and how your security objectives will support those business objectives that you have. You should also detail what your risk register is, how it's set up, how it'll be used, and who all is responsible for it. Also frequencies at which it'll be completed, things like that. And then one of the key parts of planning and one of the key parts of the ISMS, as far as for ISO 27001 and for specifically when you go before an auditor, and the place that a lot of people can get tripped up, is the KPIs, the key performance indicators. And so with these, you'll take your security objectives and you'll make sure that you're tracking how you're going to meet those security objectives. You'll make sure you have an owner, make sure you have a plan in place, you'll have measurables, and you'll have a summary of what each KPI is. Making sure that you are tracking these and making sure that you're keeping up to date on the completion of these is going to be key for any assessor or auditor that you go before. All right, and then the next part is talking about support. This has to do with your support personnel, your support team, and the resource allocation. This aligns closely with Clause 7 of ISO 27001. So first, you're going to detail out resources and how they'll be allocated in support of this ISMS and information security program. And you'll also talk about the competency of your team. And this involves anything you do pre-hire and onboarding to make sure that you have competent personnel in place for your ISMS, as well as anything you might do after hire annually, any kind of training you might do. We definitely recommend that you're doing ongoing training to make sure you maintain ongoing competency with your personnel. But this is where you would detail anything you do like that. Additionally, you're also going to talk about awareness. This is both in regard to security awareness training itself, as well as awareness of the ISMS, what it details, and what the expectations are going to be for employees and third parties in regards to information security and adhering to the information security management system itself. Then you're going to make sure you list out the different communications that you have for the different parts of your actual information security management system and program itself. So you're going to talk about how hopefully you're doing IRCs quarterly, and you're going to make sure you state that and who's the owner of that. How often you are communicating updates to your policies, who's the owner for doing that, and who all will be communicated with. And then additionally, things like specific security updates, how often will those be done? Any kind of third-party security requirement changes, when will those be communicated out? This should just detail who's in charge of keeping up with updates for communication with anything related to the information security program, and the frequency at which that's done. Then you should also have make sure you have you detail how you are going to keep documentation related to your information security policy. And the next section is going to be operations, which is, again, closely aligns with Clause 8 of ISO 27001. And this is going to talk about internal planning and control, external planning and control, vendor management controls. And so for internal planning and control, this is a place to really talk about things like how you're going to implement your annual risk assessment, hopefully doing it annually, and your just general internal strategic planning approach, whether that be yearly, quarterly, biannually, just however you plan to do it. External planning and control is going to talk about how you intend to use third parties, and how you plan to bring on new third parties, that kind of thing. So if you intend to bring on AWS or anything like that, you should have a external planning control in place for how you will bring them in, how you will align NDAs with the NDAs and SLAs to your information security management program, and how you will go about handling DPAs and bringing in confidentiality agreements. Additionally, this is where you'll talk about any kind of vendor management controls you have in place and how you review vendors. This is ideally done annually. It can be done more frequently. It should not be any less than annually, but this is definitely an important part of the ISO audit is the vendor reviews. So I would definitely make sure you're very thorough here. All right. And then 9 is going to be performance evaluation. This is another huge part of ISO. This aligns very close with Clause 9 of ISO 27001. And this is going to be about assessing the performance of the information security program as a whole. It's going to be about monitoring, measuring, analysis, and evaluation. You want to detail how you do that for the entire information security management system and the program as a whole. And this is where you want to talk about your internal audit that you do of your information security program, as well as how you do a management review of the ISMS. Again, you want to mention the frequency in which you do this management review. You want to mention the frequency in which you do this internal audit, and you want to mention specifics about how you are monitoring and measuring the performance of this ISMS. A lot of ISO requirements are going to be around continuous monitoring, continuous improvement, and continuous evaluation of your own internal security program and the internal security management system itself. So making sure that you're detailed in this section and have supporting reference policies in place is going to be a huge part of the ISO process. So if you're doing well in this section, you'll definitely do well in an ISO audit. All right, and then another huge section is going to be improvement. This is, again, kind of like, this kind of goes hand in hand with performance evaluation from the last one. This is going to be very closely tied to Clause 10, and again, is a huge portion of an ISO audit itself. So everything that's going to go here is going to be correcting nonconformities and continual improvement. So you're going to want to list out all the different things you do to find nonconformities. Going to want to talk about each of them a little bit. You've probably already talked about each of them, at least some. So previously in this ISMS, your risk assessments, any penetration tests you're doing, vulnerability scans you're doing, how you identify these nonconformities, and then go ahead and talk about how you intend to improve those. So you want to talk about your risk registers, you want to talk about your formal findings, and you want to make sure you are tracking and referencing where and how you will track these nonconformities and how you'll continue to improve them. As long as you are continuing to improve and not making backward steps on your ISMS and on your nonconformity tracking, you'll be in great shape for any kind of audit or assessment you go in front of, because those are huge key portions of the ISO audit, is the continual improvement section. And you definitely want to make sure you list out all the supporting documentation that you have here. You want to make sure you talk about your risk management policy. We'll list out references to your risk management policy, your risk register, KPIs for any KPI documents you have for specific nonconformities. So anything from your pen test, your vulnerability scans, anything that references to your security awareness training and any major nonconformities you have there. And then finally, I don't think I have a slide for it, but you want to make sure you're keeping your change log and your approval log up to date as well. I can't tell you how many audits we've gone before, and there have been issues with the change or approval log. And it's definitely one of those things that, while maybe not as operationally important as you think, whenever you're going to seek any kind of report or certification from an auditor or an assessor, the change log and the approval log is being up to date and kept clean and timely is a massive thing that they look for. So it's definitely something that you want to spend a lot of time on, making sure all your ducks in a row there. And that is all the key pieces of an information security management system. If we have any questions, now is the time. All right, if we don't have any questions, I guess we'll call it a wrap. Okay, awesome. All right, thank you for your time.